Assalamualaikum everyone. I am Brother JoArs Alferez of the Order of the Discalced Carmelite. So I am your friend, your instructor or professor in this course. So I would like to share with you this presentation regarding peace. So first, I'd like to greet everyone. Peace be with you all. So when we talk about peace, there are a lot of definition of the so-called peace. That's why it is said that peace does not have a universal and consensus definition. So it depends to the situation when we talk or when we define the so-called peace. Then what about peace? If you notice in this slide, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is threat. What did you notice or what did you observe about this? Peace is war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is threat. So it's the opposite: war, peace, freedom, slavery, and ignorance. So the opposite terms. In Latin, there is a saying, sic vis pacem para bellum. Sic vis pacem para bellum. What does it mean? If you want peace, prepare for war. That's why we said war is peace. Because if you want peace, prepare for war. In Latin, sic vis pacem para bellum. Nowadays, our world, especially in the other corner of the world, Ukraine, Russia, all of us are calling to stop the so-called war or their conflict in their countries because all of us, we want the so-called peace. So balik tayo doon, if you want peace, prepare for war or the opposite. Okay? But we have to say, stop the so-called peace. According to Mother Teresa, one of the Nobel Prize awardee, an Indian nun, a Catholic, she said, we do not need guns and bombs to bring peace. We need love and compassion. So, once again, according to her, we do not need guns and bombs to bring peace. We need love and compassion. If there is love, if there is peace, there is compassion, that's what we need in order to have peace. Not bombs, not guns, like what is happening now in Ukraine as well as in um, Russia. That's why we have to pray for them in order to have peace. And what they need is love and compassion with each other for the sake of the so called humanity. Then, in addition, according to her, works of love are works of peace. Works of love are works of peace. I remember one of the Filipino song in one of the teleserye with a theme song. Remember Mucha, yung nakaalaala sa EBS-CBN. Ano yung awit niya, theme song nila? Sana'y pag-ibig na lang ang isipin ng bawat isa sa mundo. Sana'y wala ng away, sana'y wala ng gulo. Yung love na lang sana ang mananatili ng bawat isa. But according to Mother Teresa, the works of love, sabi nga, are works of peace. If we love somebody, if we love everyone for the sake of humanity, so we have to work also the so-called peace. A very simple saying of Mother Teresa, peace begins with a smile. Peace begins with a smile. If you smile, of course, you bring that smile with someone, you are bringing the good vibes. Pag nakasimangot ka, and what will be the response kung tinitingnan mo nakasimangot? Di ba? Uy, ang taray-taray yung taong yan. Uy, ang stricto yung taong yan. Hindi marunong mag-smile. But Mother Teresa said, peace begins with a smile. Kaya nga, smile, smile, smile. Okay? Then the art of living in peace is teaching peace. If you want peace, you have to teach peace. That's according also to Pope John Paul II. If you want peace, if you want to live in peace, teach peace. Therefore, it should start within us. Then it would radiate to the community. According to the unknown source, peace, it does not mean to be a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. So once again, peace does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be in the midst of those things and still become in your heart. So therefore, it's from within. So it's from within. That's peace, according to the unknown author. If you want peace, work for justice. If there is justice, there is peace. So therefore, peace and justice, we cannot uh, separate the two because that's what this saying is, if you want peace, work for justice. I remember one of the candidates before, the presidential candidate, when he said, if you want a good government, there must be peace and there must be justice because justice is a good government. I think it's one of the Cebuano, the Chief Justice before, si Fernan. Okay? If you want peace, there must be justice because justice is a good government. Same is true with this. If you want peace, work for justice. And what is justice? I think you are familiar and you know very well what is justice. Justicia. You give to someone what is due for that someone. That's justicia in a Latin word. Then, in addition to Mother Teresa, putting peace is putting love into action. Putting love into action. So, yun yung sinabi natin kanina. Then stop violence before it happens. So therefore, we can prevent violence. We can stop violence before it happens. That's why pwede kung each one of us we have peace from within, it would radiate to the community so we can stop the so-called violence na hindi pa nangyayari. Kaya nga tawag dyan is preventive system. So we can prevent that violence. Okay? If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. That's in addition of what Mother Teresa said. If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. And what does it mean? We are brothers and sisters. Whatever is our belief, our religion, our faith, our culture, our tribe. Okay? Pag nakalimutan yon that we are brothers and sisters, that we belong to each other, talagang walang kapayapaan. That's the point of Mother Teresa. So looking at this image, this picture, diba? Remember Galthong? Peace is the absence of war. Alaalan nyo, napansin ninyo, mga tinuro na ibang teacher ninyo? Peace is the absence of war, according to Galthong. Okay, gera-gera, walang peace. Pag dito, naglalaro ang bata, mapayapa sila. May freedom. Okay? Pag may war, like now, if you internalize what is happening in Ukraine, kahit na tingnan nyo sa television, nakakaiyak. Mga bata, mga buntis, mga nanganganak, civilians. Talagang kawawa. Another definition, peace means inner stillness and calm, a sense of well-being. So we move on. So peace is harmony and cooperation. If there is harmony and cooperation, therefore there is peace because there is also the so-called love. Peace, another definition, in the society exists when conflicts are resolved non-violently and there is a practical effort to satisfy the basic needs of people in a fair and reasonable manner. So in the society, of course, there is peace. It exists yung peace na yon in the society when conflict are resolved non-violently. Remember Gandhi, yung ginawa niya na non-active violence. I think in your history you still remember. They fast, they pray. Nung lusubin na sana silang British Army, then what happened? Miracles happen. And there are a lot of replicas in the other countries. EDSA revolution and bloody revolution. That's the replica coming from Gandhi. Now we can resolve peace without any violent actions. Okay? Pero mahirap yon, mahirap yon. Pero pwedeng mangyari. Kaya nga, practical to satisfy the basic needs of people in a fair and reasonable manner. Then another definition according to the research of Rummel, peace defined as a state of law, civil government, state of justice or goodness, a balance or equilibrium of powers. It is always been the highest values for some, according, and for some it's also supreme values according to Rummel in his research. So that's peace. State of law, that's why we have the Constitution. It will guide us to prevent, to do something wrong so that we'll be guided and will not violate those written there and there is peace. What about this balance or equilibrium of powers? Remember in our government we have the three branches. What are those branches? Executive, legislative, judiciary. The executive and the legislative, they are the lawmakers, while the judiciary, they are the implementers of that law na ginagawa sa executive as well as the legislative. But what is happening today, particularly in our country? May balance of power ba? Or somebody dictating to the legislative or to the judiciary? And you know that one. Okay? May investigation sa Senate. Wag na kayong magpa-testify dyan. Kasi yung mga taong dyan, walang kwenta, personalan. Why intervene? They have equal footing supposed to be. Balance of power, equal of power, the three branches of the government. But what happened? May mga intervention. Ikaw ang isusunod, si Reno. Si Dilema na bilanggo na. Si Lene sanang isusunod pero hindi man nakaya. Is there peace? That's the point there. Okay? Peace is not merely the absence of war. So ito yung sinabi ni Gatong. But it is the absence of violence, physical, psychological, and structural in nature. Yan yung akala sa iba nga. Kasi, okay, pag walang war, okay, may peace. But sabi nga, it is not merely the absence of war, but the absence of violence. Dapat wala din yung violence, especially physical, emotional, psychological, as well as the structural in nature. Kaya nga ang hirap ma-achieve ng peace, but we can. Okay? In our structure, particularly in the Philippine government, there is so much problem in this country. Remember that one. I hate drugs. Okay? I hate corruption because that's in the structure. But malapit na siyang magtapos, hindi ko na kaya. And there is no peace. Pasalamat tayo ang tukhang epektibo. That's a strategy. That's well and good. Okay? But what's happening? Kaya nga, mas lalo pang nagka-problema. And where is peace there? Because it's in the structure. But I think each one of us, we can make a difference. If I'll start, you'll start, and each one of us will start the so-called the inner peace, then it will radiate to the community, to our family, to the whole world. I think we'll be able to attain the so-called peace. Kaya nga, nakasalalay sa atin lahat. Okay? Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. That's according to Einstein. I remember Einstein, a scientist, but may sinabi talaga siya about peace. Cannot be kept by force. Same is true with Mother Teresa. Not by guns, not by bombs, but by love and compassion. Sa kanya naman, can only be achieved by understanding. Okay? So another definition, peace is part of the differing way of life in many cultures, in the Jewish as well as Christian. That's why in the beginning of this presentation, the slide, peace be with you. Then in Islam, every time they greet each other, Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. Then the Greeks, they have the Irene. Okay? That's the literal, it can be literal meaning of peace. But that's peace, especially like the greetings. Peace be with you all. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, peace be with you. I'm sharing my peace with you. Sa mga Indian naman, anong sinasabi? Namaste. Diba yung Indian? Namaste. I'll share my divine peace with me to with share it with you. Same is so you are sharing your peace with you at saka yung sa akin. So ang ganda. Okay? Peace. So Galtong, another definition, the etymological from Hebrew word shalom, that's peace. Arab is salam, which means beyond also the Roman peace, which is pax also, that's in the Latin, to an understanding of peace that includes justice. So I told you peace and justice should go hand in hand, and you cannot separate the two. If there is peace, there is justice. Okay? Shalom, in Arab salam. That's why salam, Islam comes from salam, which means peace. A total surrender to God. Okay. Then peace is not only the absence of all violence, but also a presence of justice and human security in all their forms. So human security, justice and human security in all their forms. That's according to Galton, if we want to achieve the so-called peace. So you are familiar with this? There are two kinds, the negative or the hot peace, as well as the positive or the cold peace, the negative, then the hot peace is the positive peace. It is the absence of wide-ranging physical violence or the condition of war. So the absence that's more on cold peace, while the positive peace or the hot peace, okay, promoting structural and cultural peace, and it involves in the development of society by which there is an structural violence and societal injustices. That's more on the positive piece. So in this diagram, so the two kinds of peace, the positive, the hot, the cold peace. Once again, the negative peace is the cold peace, the absence of direct or physical violence, both maliit man or malaki, while on the other side of this diagram, the hot peace or the positive peace, the present condition, the presence of condition of the well-being, just relationship, like okay ang social, economic, political, as well as ecological. Okay? Pababa dyan, nakasulat structural violence. Ang halimbawa dyan sa structural violence, poverty, hunger. And I think in the previous peace education subject, and it was explained clearly, o na-elaborate talaga sa mga teacher niyo, this is just a sort of refresher one. Okay? We have also the social and cultural violence like racism, sexism, religion, intolerance. Then pababa, kasali yung about ecology, under that the violence against nature. Okay? On the other side naman, the direct violence, we have the war, torture, the child and women abuse. So that's the opposite, the violence. Okay? So there are levels of peace. There are four. The inner peace or the personal peace, then the social peace, inner personal, the social, our relationship to others, of course, peace with the environment, peace with nature, the ecological peace, then as well as number four, peace with our Almighty, peace with the Supreme. So those are the four levels of peace. So now the question, can we attain the so-called peace? And it's up to you, it's up to us, it's up to me. Personally, yes, I can. But hindi basta-basta yan. Kaya nga, it can be a process. Okay? So the four levels in this diagram, from personal peace, then it would radiate outer, interpersonal, then to the community, then of course to the whole world. So from within, peace, it would really start from within. That's why it's a level, hakbang yun siya. Kaya nag-uumpisa yan talaga sa atin. Pag unpeaceful ka, that's really the problem. Kaya nga, in your family, pag unpeaceful ka, kaya nga, pag unpeaceful, it would also radiate. Okay? Same is true with in the community. Pag unpeaceful ang community, magkalabo-labo talaga. Okay? But there's a challenge to all of us. We can start the so-called peace from within. Then it would radiate to the whole community, then to the nations, and of course, to the whole world. Okay? And that includes, of course, our relationship with our Creator. There are principles of peace. The first, one can resolve conflict and thus make peace unless the root cause of conflict are identified and dealt with. The root cause of conflict are identified and dealt with. So I'm happy with this new government sa atin yung BARM. And why? The root cause of the conflict before, it was being addressed at na-identify yon. That's why ngayon, may BARM tayo kasi nag-uusap. Pero the question, may peace na ba? Still in the process. Hindi yan basta-basta. Okay, that's the first principle of peace. Second, it is not possible to resolve conflict and attain peace unless attention is given to justice. That's why I told you peace and justice should go hand in hand. And you cannot separate the two. If you want peace, there must be justice. If there are, like before in Mindanao, particularly in our land, there are injustices. But because of this ball, yung yes to ball, naalaala ninyo, that injustices was being addressed in order to give justice. That's why attention is given to justice. Meron yan. Okay, that's why nag-agree yung both parties. Okay. Next, people's deeper need are not totally incompatible. And we know that one. Each one of us, each individual is unique. Okay, wala talagang kapareho. Iba-ibang pananaw, iba-ibang opinion, iba-iba lahat. Walang magkapareho, kahit takambal man. But with this incompatibility, in order to achieve peace, anong gagawin natin? Papasok agad si Stephen Covey. The win-win situation. Though we are incompatible, but yet we can compromise in order to achieve the so-called peace. Okay? Yung win-win, integrate, compromise, meet at the center. Nanalo siya, nanalo ito, and there is resolution, there is peace. So yun. Though we have individual differences, but if we meet at the center, we can attain the so-called peace. Next, conflict resolution and therefore peacemaking involves a restructuring of relationship. So like us, there is really a need for us to restructure one's relationship. In our land, in Badabang Samoro, we have the so-called tribe people, but there is a need to restructure. And why? We have a lot of biases, prejudices, discrimination with each other. Maririnig pa natin yan ngayon. Pero sabi ko, tayo na yon dapat ang may alam. Tayo na yon dapat ang magtuturo sa ating mga anak, sa mga bata. I, for one, of course, to my students. Kayo, mga professional, to your family or whatever agency kayo nagtatrabaho, pwede niyong masishare. And there's a need to restructure. Kung bias man tayo sa isa't isa noon, so therefore, restructure, baguhin natin. Especially yung pamuyayaw, maririnig pa rin natin yan sa mga baryo-baryo. Konting ano, alitan, automatic agad. Pag Christian, baboy ka, baboy ka, baboy ka. Ang Christian naman, maganti man din. Muklo ka, muros ka. Di ba masakit din? Napansin din yun? But, there is a need, sabi ko, to restructure that relationship. Sana mangibabaw na yung sinatawag ng love, compassion, as well as respect, so that we'll be able to attain peace. That's why I'm happy with Kagi Murad when he said, the Bangsamoro government, it's not exclusive for the Moro, but it is inclusive for the Moro, the settlers, the Christians, as well as the IPs. So yun yung kagandahan. Though we have injustices before, though we are biased, we have prejudices with each other, discrimination with each other, there is a need to restructure the relationship. Okay, that's the last value or principles of peace. Then what about peace education? According to UNICEF, peace education is the process of promoting knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values needed to bring about behavior change, and that will enable children, youth, adults to prevent conflict and violence, both overt and structural, to resolve conflict peacefully and to create the conditions conducive to peace, whether it is interpersonal, intergroup, national, or in the international level. That's why we have this subject. Okay? We have peace. In our university, we have Bachelor of Arts major in Peace and Development, Master of Arts, as well as Doctor of Philosophy major in Peace and Development. So that this peace education, ipalaganap natin ang kabutihan nito. Each one of us na kumukuha sa subject na ito, kahit na hindi ka man peace major. Kaya nga, process siya, the peace education, in promoting the knowledge, the skills, our attitudes, and the values needed to bring about behavior change that will enable us, children, youth, adults, to prevent conflict and violence. That's why with this government, yung sa atin, BARM, I'm still very positive that we'll be able to attain the so-called peace through educating our children, through peace education. Okay? May conflict have to resolve. Now, the rido. Medyo hinay-hinay na, nabawas-bawasan na. And why? Na-educate na yung mga tao. There are a lot of seminars about peace and development peace education. We have a lot of seminars. Okay? So, from within, na-resolve na, then hanggang kaya nga, intergroup, interpersonal to international. Ngayon, the problem international na with China, Russia now, at saka yung Ukraine, North Korea, South Korea, tayo, Pilipinas, pasingit palagi yung China. That's more international level. Pero sana, i-educate sarili, not only us, but also doon din sila. I think they have also their peace education there. Okay? So, Galtong pa rin, sabi niya, this is a pedagogical efforts, the strategy, this more on education, to create a world of at peace. By peace, we mean more than the absence of war. Yung negative peace, sabi natin kanina. So, pedagogical efforts, ituro natin all the methods that we learn. We have to share this to some, especially those na wala pang skills, walang values, walang attitudes, walang knowledge when we talk about peace education. Betty Reardon, a well-known Australian peace advocate, educator, okay, anong sabi niya? Peace education is an attempt to promote the development of the authentic planetary consciousness that will enable us to function as global citizens and to transform the present human conditions by changing the social structures and patterns of thought that have created it. The transformational imperative must be at the center, both in the knowledge and values. Okay? So once again, promote development of authentic planetary consciousness that will enable us to function as global citizen. So hindi lang tayo mag-isip na Pinoy lang talaga ako. We have to think global. Kaya nga, in Peace and Development, we have global citizenship subject. Kaya nga, what is happening now in the other side of the corner in Ukraine and Russia, dapat affected tayo as a citizen dito. Not only because of business, not only because of the langis na nagmahal ng ating gasolina. It's not that. Global. We have to be conscious. Global citizenship na malawak ng pananaw natin. Unlike before na, tayo lang, mabuhay tayo. Na tayo lang. But it's not like that now. Okay? Kaya nga, kailangan to transform the present human condition. In transforming human condition in our society, it would start from within us. That's really a challenge. So, when we talk about transformation, ang hirap niyan. Pero, makaya natin. Hinay-hinay lang. That's why peace education is also a process. Okay. So, ito na yung four types of violence naman na nabanggit na ito in the previous slide, pero ito yon siya. Si Reardon pa rin nagsabi, in the forms of violence like the direct, structural, economic, political, as well as ecological. So, paano natin to i-handle when it comes to personal, itong the direct or physical violence? Example, suicide, drug abuse, that's very personal. To interpersonal naman, domestic violence, violent crimes. Then to the national, like civil war, violent crimes, the human rights abuses, especially nowadays. Tukhang is a good strategy. But what about the human rights violation or the abuses? And you know that one. Then, to the global, of course, conventional war, nuclear war. Sabi nga, baka iba na at lahat na itong nuclear weapon ng mga Russian. Sana naman, hindi naman ganun kasi talagang mahirap yun. That's more or physical direct violence. So, kung paano tinitingnan, personal, interpersonal, national, as well as global. What about the structural, economic, political, socio-cultural, psychological violence? Under personal, the powerlessness, the alienation of self-esteem and anxiety. So, yun yung mararanasan. Then, sa interpersonal naman, local inequalities like poverty, of course, then prejudices, cultural dominations, racism, sexism, religious intolerance. That's under interpersonal. Like racism, wala man tayong races, isang race lang man tayo. Sexism. Nowadays, the issue of, may sabi lang third sex. But there is no such thing as third sex. But that's under that interpersonal. Kung ano may yung pagkatao nila, they have the sexual preference, respeto na lang siguro natin. Then religious intolerance. Yun bang iniisip? Ako lang talagang relihiyon na tama. Ako lang ganito. Very exclusivist mag-isip. That's the problem. Then to national naman, the same. We have sexism, religious intolerance. We have also racism. Then to global, more or less, the same pa rin under social, political, as well as psychological yung nararanasan. Poverty, nandoon pa rin. Then to ecological naman, personal on the issue of overconsumption. Alam natin yon. Okay? Then to interpersonal, ganun din, the pollution as well as overconsumption. To the national, overconsumption, pollution, the chemical and biological warfare na pwedeng mangyayari yun. Same is true with the global. Okay? So those are the types of violence: physical, structural, ecological, economic, then with this effect to the personal, interpersonal, then national, as well as to the global level. Next, there are basic assumptions when you talk about peace education. What are these assumptions? Talks about human rights, of course, democracy, cooperation and solidarity, that's an assumption, preservation of cultures, internationalism, protection of the environment, and spirituality. And this basic assumption, in order to promote basic promote the so-called peace education. So ito yun makikita, sabi nga, founded on universal values like attitude, which are related once again sa mga issue na nabanggit natin kanina like human rights, democracy, and the rest. Okay? Then what about the pedagogical or the methodologies or approach? Kung ikaw, it happens to be, if you are a teacher, may mga teacher dito by profession, may mga police dito, pero in our own way, we are also teacher to your family, to your community, kahit na police ka man, kahit na sundalo ka man. And of course, for as teacher, o kahit na hindi ka teacher, you can be a peace educator. Okay? So ano yung approaches na gawin? Cooperative and collaborative learning. So you can do it in your own family. Critical pedagogy, yung mga strategy kung paano. Like the scenario now, if your child will ask you, nanay, tatay, bakit nag-away sila ganito? Bakit? Di ba friend yan sila? Dapat Soviet Union noon dati. Dapat may alam ka rin. Bakit palagi tayong inaaway sa China? Bakit ganito? Uto-uto lang tayo. Bakit nagpauto ang presidente? Okay? Dapat alam natin yon. Then, inquiry and methodology and solving problems. So, may mga tanong, dapat marunong ka rin mag-share in order to resolve those problems. Then, the emphasis of the conceptual framework, especially to framework of peace and development or the culture of peace. Then, conflict analysis and response. Alam na alam niyo yan. Then, the civil society participation. Bakit may nag-rally? Bakit ganito? Bakit pag may eleksyon ang daming tao? Okay, they are the civil society. They participated because of their right of suffrage. Dapat alam din natin yon. So once again, though by profession, your work, you are not a teacher, but we can be a teacher in our own way. Once again, to your community, to the family, as well as to the agency where you belong. Okay. Now, what about peace education around the world? So in Japan, peace education is limited and defined as an art of, take note of this, in Japan, defined as an anti-atomic bomb education. And why? Bakit na-define nila ang peace education limited to anti-atomic bomb education? Remember, yung World War, ano nangyari? Hiroshima, Nagasaki, kita ninyo? That's why, para in their mind, dapat may peace education but limited lang nandoon nga sa atomic bomb. In Australia, peace education emphasizes on combating racism, ethnocentrism, and violent behaviors. On one hand, advocating cultural diversity, eliminating nuclear weapons, yung nuclear weapons sa kanila, and resolving conflict. So why they emphasize on combating racism? Kasi in Australia, I have a lot of friends as well as co-teachers in the university before in Notre Dame University. They studied in Australia. Then they share, when they came back, they share with us, in Australia, they have also a lot of IPs. They have also a lot of the different cultures. Okay? Kaya nga iba-iba. So like here, in our, akala natin Australian, sila-sila lang. May mga lumad din yun sila. May mga IPs din yun sila. Marami nga sila mga IPs. Okay? That's why sabi dito, in Australia, they advocate cultural diversity. Okay? Kaya nga may sinasabi, unity in diversity. We are one yet diverse in our culture, in our belief, in our practices. Then, eliminating nuclear weapons and resolving conflicts. That's in Australia. In South Africa, where peace is preoccupied with structural violence such as human rights, security, economic equality, spread because of the widespread poverty that people experience in the area. So yun yung focus din sa South Africa kasi mahirap sila. Like structural violence, yung focus tayo dito. May mga human rights, i-focus natin dyan. So yun yung peace education naman sa kanila. Then in the United States, ano naman sa kanila? Peace education programs often concern of the prejudice, violence, and environmental issues. And why? Prejudices? Because feeling nila they are the superior race. May mga IP ba din sa US? Yes, may mga IP din doon. The minorities, mayroon din. Okay, then prejudice, bias with each other, nandoon. Then environmental issues, and why? Kasi sila yung maraming ginagawa na nasisira ang ating kalikasan, our earth, the mother nature. Kaya nga, peace education sa kanila, yun yung nakafocus doon. Especially prejudice, violence, as well as environmental issues. Kasi all over the world, sila yung talaga yung malaking contribution bakit nasira ang ating mundo. Okay? So ito yung United States in Cameroon, where the country's leadership adopted the introduction of citizenship, education, and democracy in schools and colleges with the main objective of resolving the frequent inter-ethnic conflict in the country. So yon, away-away din sila, mga ethnic groups. Their leaders believe that effective peace studies and citizenship education should develop greater social cohesion and prevent the instant conflict in the country, which may adversely affect the entire Central African sub-region. So, kaya nga, nakafocus din sila doon. May conflict, ethnic conflict. So, therefore, yun yung focus sa kanilang peace education. Ayan. Now, in the Philippines, why we need peace education? So, that's the point now, especially in our land. Peace education is centered on peace negotiation and ceasefire agreements between the government and the revolutionary movement such as MILF, MNLF, the Communist Party of the Philippines, and the like. So MILF naresolba na, binigyan na ng pagkakataon to lead yung self-determination nila. They have to lead by their own. Na-extend ngayon, but I'm still hoping na if there is change of attitude of the leadership of our leaders, we can attain the so-called peace in Mindanao. But by 2025, pag wala pa ring mangyayari, especially development, mark my word, my dear people, pag walang development, may problema. Okay? But I'm still hoping with the 3 years, 2025. Baka sabihin naman, walang suportang the national government, balik naman kami sa bundok. And it happened before. Sana history would not repeat by itself. Sana may pagbabago. If there is change of attitude, the behavior, leadership. That's why may banat tayo sa barn. Instead of good governance, dapat moral governance. Sana naman. Pero medyo nawala ng issue. I was invited, I think 3 to 4 times to discuss about moral governance. Sabi ko, mahirap ito i-attain. Dito muna tayo sa good governance muna. Good leadership. Pag mayroon tayo dyan, of course, pag lahat may trabaho, pag may development, wala ng kidnapper, wala ng karnapper, wala ng mandurugas, wala na. Kasi ang problema, poverty. Pag may makakain yan lahat, kahit na wala kang pinag-aralan, gawin ka, may trabaho ka dyan, may hanap buhay ka, bakit ka pa maghanap ng away? Kasi you are satisfied. So that's why in the Philippines, more on peace negotiation. With the NPA and the Communist Party, may problema pa rin tayo. Okay? Hindi ako makipag-usap sa inyo. Kasi linabag ninyo ang ganito. Ito naman sa kabila, astig naman. Season, bumalik ka sa Pilipinas, ganito, ganyan. So sisihan, turuan. That's why in the Philippines peace education, we need ceasefire agreements as well as negotiation. Usap lang. Like what the government did with the MILF as well as before the MNLF. NPA on the process. Sana the next government magkaroon ng pag-uusap para itong peace education natin magkaroon din ng katuparan at saka yung kapayapaan na inaasam-asam ng lahat makakamtan. Then, it also tackles the structural violence such as human rights. Alam natin yan. Sabi ni Presidente, handa na ako. Inako ko yan lahat. Pag mawala na ako, expect na may kaso nga ngayon sa international arena about human rights violation. Then, it also includes economic inequality, social discriminations among the marginalized groups of the country, for these are the serious issues that people face in the country, especially the marginalized, the poor, the oppressed. Okay? Napansin nyo bakit kayo, mga men in uniform, bakit maraming NPA kung punta kayo sa bundok-bundok? Kasi hindi sila natutukan. Walang development doon. Take it or leave it. Kaya nga ngayon, ang gawin doon sa mga military at sa police, so masaktan man kayo, mga men in uniform dito, women in uniform dito, that's the reality. Kung may development yon, madala kaya sila sa ideology? I don't think so. Farmers ngayon, kawawa. Grabing utang nila. Tapos, kita ninyo? So, that's the point there. That's why we need peace education. Kasi the marginalized talagang problema, I think, in the country, in the Philippines, 80-85% are marginalized. Marginalized. They are poor, they are the oppressed. Okay? Kaya nga kung mag-join sila ng sa kabila, automatic agad yan, masama kayo, ganito, ganyan. Pero on the other side of the coin, kung maintindihan mo lang din yon, may tama din sila. I was assigned as a missionary in Negros. That was 1993, 1994. Kawawa ang mga sakada doon, yung taga-tapas ng tubo. Then some of them, kaya nga maraming mga nagjo-join sa mga QMO sa NPA doon. And why? There are even priests and seminarians. When I was there, I was immersed. May immersion kami 1 year as a missionary. Minsan madadala ka sa tao. Kasi doon, mga siyendero, meron silang parang asosasyon. Then itong mga sakada, itong mga workers nila, pag gawa ka na masama sa asyendang ito, hindi ka na makapunta doon sa asyenda sa kabila. Why? Kasi parang ano sila ba? Ganyan. Parang mga kalabaw, hinahawakan sa ilong. Okay, hindi pwedeng makalabas. Then one time, one scenario, kasi noon sa kanila, kasi tubo, once a year lang yan mag-harvest. Tapos ang nagsusupply, may mga rasyon sa bigas. Because they cannot, plant or they cannot have their own farm kasi asyenda yon. Kaya yung iba kawawa dyan lang sa garden na maliit. Kaya pinagbawalan. So naghintay sa rasyon. Once a year lang sila nag-harvest. So ganoon sila kahirap. Then one time hindi binigyan ng rasyon sa kanilang asyendero, sa kanilang boss. Tapos mayroon man sila doong bodega. Niransak. Kaya pinahuli lahat. Then I was there with the priest. Brother ako noon during the time. Then kami nag-negotiate. Kawawa yung mga tao. Walang makain kaya niransak na may bigas man. Bakit ibinigyan? Buti na lang natauhan itong mga siyendero. So that's the point there. In the Philippines, we really need peace education. Not only here in Mindanao, but in the other side of our countries, in the other sulok of our countries. Kasi problema nga ang NPA. Samar, sa Luzon, dito sa bandang Davao, ang dami. Makilala, di ba? May mga NPA din yan. Okay? Kaya nga, pag matutukan yan sila, I think wala nang magre-rebelde. Kaya nga, kailangan yung peace education. Peace ang kailangan. Of course, ang development dapat doon. Justice dapat nandoon. Okay? So, there are theoretical views of the peace education. The first is Interactionist View. What about this Interactionist View? Interactionists believe that, like many things in life, peace education starts at home, developed through socialization or interaction with significant persons in one's life. So, starts from the home, your interaction, kaya nga pag okay yung pamilya, ang ganda with this interactionist view. Pero pag sabog yung pamilya, then punta sa community with that experience, sabog din. Okay, pero ang ganda, believe that likely many things in life starts in their home. Then it will develop through the interaction. Kaya nga interactionist. Next is the functional perspective. Believe that the school plays a crucial role in attaining peace from personal level to global level. So from home, functional naman to the school. Kaya ang eskwelahan talagang malaking crucial role, papel niya in order to achieve peace. The personal as well as to the global level. Kaya nga education has a huge role to play in promoting the ideals of peace, freedom, and social justice. Now, if you will ask, bro, bakit ang UP, educated man sila, okay? Personal siguro at home, interactionist, okay naman. Nung nakapag-aral sa UP, naging aktivista. So, sa school, plays an important. So, ibig sabihin, nasa school din yon. What about their culture? Anong nangyari sa school? Or baka yung bata na kumikilang na talaga sa ideology na kung saan hindi natugunan ng gobyerno. Okay? Next is another theoretical view is conflict perspective. The assertive role of education in promoting solidarity, kaya conflict perspective, promote solidarity, peace, and harmony is one of the great self-illusion of education. So yung pananaw, may conflict, marisolba dapat. You have to promote solidarity, promote harmony with oneself para hindi lang magiging illusion yon, dapat ituro yon. Then the last is the critical perspective. Peace education is a tool Western countries use to cover up the injustices and oppression they have caused the world, especially the world countries. So ito naman more on global naman itong critical perspective, especially the Western countries na mga mayayaman. Anong ginawa nila? Kaya inaabuso nila or ginagamit nila ang mga third world countries. Then peace education as transformative education, or an education that promotes the culture of peace. It is essentially transformative. It cultivates the knowledge, behavior that in the first place have either created or exacerbated violent conflicts, and it seeks a transformative by building awareness and understanding, developing concern, and finally challenging personal as well as social that will enable people to create conditions and systems that actualize non-violence, justice, environmental care, and other peace values. So other peace values. So we'll be talking that one later, especially those may mga subject na values education or the peace values. So this transformative education, it takes time. Hindi yan basta-basta matransform. It's a long process before we'll be able to acquire this transformative education. Of course, through educating peace to its and everyone of us, and of course to the community or to the agency where you belong. So this means that learning process utilize the peace education is holistic and it tries to address the cognitive, affective, and active dimensions of the learner. Okay? Holistic. Okay? Then tries to address especially the mind, the cognitive, the heart, affective, as well as the active, the action, the psychomotor, active dimension of the learner. So, yon. Then, why educate for peace? So the question, why educate for peace? According to Reardon, reminds that peace education has a important social purpose. It seeks to transform the present human conditions by changing social structures and patterns of thought that have created. So it was mentioned in the previous slide about Reardon. That's why we need to educate peace with this social purpose in order to transform the society. But before that, the challenge is we have also to change first our own self before changing the world. Kaya nga, learning to abolish war, teaching toward a culture of peace, the main purpose of peace education are the elimination of social injustice and rejection of violence and abolition of war. That's why I think in your previous subjects in peace education, you know very well what is culture of peace. The attitudes, the behaviors, the values, okay, in which each one should acquire, and of course, including the knowledge. Okay, that's according to Reardon. Then, peace education is a practical imperative. Educating for peace will give us a long run the practical benefits that we seek. As stated earlier, it is expected to build a critical mass of people who will demand for and address the needed personal and structural changes that will transform the many problems that relate to peace into non-violent, humane, and ecological alternatives and solutions. That's why that's more on the practical imperative when we talk about peace education. So in this diagram, when we talk about peace, in this schema, so the values for peace education, like the values or the attitude that includes self-respect, respect for others, gender equality. So these are the values more on the attitudes under this. We have compassion, the global concern, ecological cooperation, openness, the justice and social responsibility vision. Then on the other side, yung knowledge, in this schema, another side knowledge is holistic concept of peace, conflict and violence causes, some peaceful alternatives like disarmament, dapat wala nang baril, dapat hindi natin turuan mga kabataan natin, hindi natin bilhan ng yung baril-barilan kasi that's more on war. And in their mind, magka-problema tayo. Kaya nga, may mga anak tayo dito, kung pwedeng maiwasan, wag bigyan yung baril-barilan, wag na. Kasi that's more on knowledge. It's alternative, peaceful alternative. Yung disarmament, wala na sana. Then, the conflict resolution, the human rights, human solidarity, democratization, then the sustainable development. Then under skills, in this schema, we have the reflection. That's why in peace and development, I think in your other subject, palaging may reflection paper, may reaction paper. Ito yung palaging pinapagawa ko. Okay? May reflection kasi that's a skill. Then critical thinking and analysis, that's also a skill. Decision making, given in a dilemma, in a two situation, you have to decide. That's why you have to develop the skill. Imagination, that's also one. Conflict resolution, empathy, as well as the group building. So that's more on the schema of knowledge, skills, and attitudes for peace education. So ito na yung attitude sinasabi natin. Then the skills, kanina yung binabasa ko, the reflection, critical thinking, ina-assessa natin the empathy, the group building. So these are the six petals, yung in the culture of peace, yung framework, and in which all of you are familiar, and this is just a reminder. Like this one thing, the culture of war, living compassion and justice, promoting human rights and social responsibility, building cultural solidarity, living harmony with the environment, and cultivating inner peace. So this was adopted by the UNESCO. Then pwede man din yung mga maliit lang na madali lang tandaan like inner peace, personal peace, the dismantling culture of war, that's militarization, living with compassion and justice, that's structural violence, promoting human rights, that's human rights, then building intercultural solidarity, yung intercultural solidarity, and of course, environmental care or living harmony with the environment. So ito lang, medyo may phrase, pero yung mga isang mga salita, pwede din yon in the petals or the framework of the so-called peace or the culture of peace. Then what about this dismantling the culture of war? Take note on this. Concern of mitigating all support for the war system, including competitive games, gender oppression, defense spending, oppressive security system, and the sale of toys that mimic violence and teach children destructive behavior. So yun yung sabi ko kanina. Okay? Toys, guns, knives, the violent videos. Kaya nga ito nga ngayon because our children are digital natives. So therefore, we have kaya nga parental guidance. Kailangan yon. Bakit? May karahasan, sexual, horror, droga na hindi angkop sa mga batang manonood. ML, in Cotabato City may nagrumble dahil sa sabong, dahil sa ML, may nagsaksakan. That's the point. Kuha natin. Dahil sa culture of war. Dismantling the culture of war. That's why dapat wala na. Bata pa lang, turuan natin. Alam ko kayo, mga pulis, men and women in uniform, mga sundalo, mga fire, meron kayo mga baril. Pero alam ko, ang iba sa inyo, wag na ka kasi wag hawakan na ka. Kayo na nagsasabi. Pero yung iba, iba man din. Una ko, ito yung hawakan mo, pero yung iba, alam nila. And that should be dapat na kung pwedeng ibawal, ibawal. Kasi baka matrigger ang pag-iisip ng bata. Okay palang pumatay, okay pala. Kaya nga sa panonood ng video, patay-patayan, gera-gera yan. Diba na-develop yung critical nga na okay lang pala. Okay? Kaya nga, subaybayan SPG. Okay? Istritong patnubay ng mga magulang kailangan. Environmental care, environmental peace. What is happening to our environment today? Include fostering the global stewardship. We are all God's stewards, so therefore we have to take care of our environment because we know very well our environment nowadays is suffering. Okay? Ang init, hindi na alam pag tayo in the Philippines, tag-init, tag-ulan. Then, pag tag-init, tag-ulan, summer, alam natin, tag-init yan, pero may bagyo na. Pag December, taglamig yan, pero mainit na. Because of the global warming, climate change. So that's an issue. So kung paano nila ibalik, we can repair back once again. We have to plant trees. Malaking tulong yon. Okay, that's more on environmental care. Bakit may baha sa Iligan? Bakit may baha doon sa Leyte? Bakit may storm surge? May daluyong? Dahil din sa kagagawan natin ng mga tao. Bakit pag kunti lang baha agad? Wala namang mga kahoy, wala namang mga puno. Okay? So that's the point there. Then education for justice and compassion. Okay? Deconstruct globalization processes, neoliberalism, and the notions of the common. So this is more on the education for justice, more on the structural violence. Then the human rights, of course, introduce students to their civil, economic, political, cultural, as well as religious rights, among others, and assesses the nature of violations of these rights. Kaya nga, tingnan ito, human rights turuan, ano-ano ito? Sa movement, association, to religion, to the speech, information. So, that's the rights of a person. Pag na-violate yan, that's really the problem. That's why in our Constitution, what article? 13, about our human rights. Okay? So, pag-aralan uli yon kasi kailangan yon. Pag na-violate yan, problema, walang peace. Okay? Intercultural solidarity. Ito ngayon, the minorities. It is concerned with interactions between the different groups, cultural norms, and the national and international institutions that perpetuate violence, especially to our indigenous peoples. They are the minority, minsan dinidiscriminate pa natin. Makita ba natin yan dito sa atin? Okay? Ay, parang tingin natin di tao. The Ipis, the Manobo, the Tiduray, the Timuli, the Blaan. Tingin natin sa kanila mababa, that it should not be like that. Dapat equal. They are human being. Kaya nga, pasok tayo ng anad yung value of empathy. Kung ikaw kaya nasa kalagayan, tapos dinidiscriminate ka, anong mararamdaman mo? Tao yun sila. Okay? Harnessing inner peace. So inner peace, personal peace, allows students and all of us to evaluate our own physical, emotional, spiritual states, as well as the interplay between the macro and the micro conflicts. Can we do it? Yes, we have a lot of exercises. We have a lot of how to attain the inner peace. Mga Hindu, mga Buddhist, may mga mantra yan sila when they pray. I think the Hinduism, when they meditate, yung nila, and they will be able, kaya transcendental meditation, and they will be able to achieve that inner peace. The Buddhists, di ba? When they pray, that's why we have the so-called yung mga exercises, the yoga. That's part of the transcendental meditation in order to achieve the inner peace. Pero ngayon, ang yoga, ginawa naman siyang the exercise para sa katawan. But the intention of the Buddhists is more on the inner peace. In order to achieve the nirvana, in order to become Buddha, I have to be with this so-called, in experiencing the so-called inner peace. Okay? That's why also when we pray, I think we experience inner peace with our Creator. Whatever is our belief, whatever is our religion. Then we have also the sources, the spiritual as well as the faith traditions as sources for peace. Okay. May magre-report dito, those who are taking PhDs, the spiritual or the religious source of peace, and this is part of it. The different religion in the world, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, atheists, and the rest, Taoism. That's in China. The Tao. Okay? So, there are a lot of spiritual sources of peace, especially to this major religion in the world. But the problem, ang mga mananampalataya, nag-away-away man din. How can we achieve the so-called peace? In the Christian world, there are 48,000 religion. Christians, they claim to be the true religion. Pero sinong kinawawa? Kaming mga Katoliko. Mangmang daw kami. Wala kaming alam. Lahat. O kayo, may mga hindi man Katoliko dito. Anong pinipreach sa atin? Tinuruan tayo. Preach love. That's what Jesus told us. Love one another. Pero ang kapwa naming mga Kristiyano kuno, bukang bibig sa mga ministro, paninira lamang. So what is happening to our world today? Where is peace now? I think that's very clear. If you hear Kibuloy, if you hear before yung namatay si Bes, si Soriano, televised. Bukang bibig, condemning us, Catholics. We are all idolaters. Naniwala kami dito, sinamba daw namin itong cross. Yung kahoy na yan. Sabi ko, kung dito lang ito sa harap ko, sinampal ko itong crucifix ko, tingnan natin, di sila matauhan. Wala kaming turo, ganun. Okay? So that's more, ang sakit nga. When they talk about religion, may conflict pa rin. Pero sinasabi, our religion, the spiritual, our faith, that's supposed to be the source of peace. Pero in the Christian world nga, problema. What about in the other world? The Islamic world, may problema ba? May tinanong ako na classmate ko dati, kumuha kami PhD. Our topic, more or less the same. Sabi ng aming professor, Sino lang ang maligtas? Sinong totoong relihiyon? Taas ka agad yung isa kong kuan. Kami lang talaga because it's written in the Holy Quran that Muslim, sila kami lang talaga mas save. The rest go to hell. Taas din ako. And ako, by the way, ganito, ano yung nakasulat din na yung tinanong si Prophet Muhammad in your hadith, who will be saved? Diba? The Christians, the followers of Saint John the Baptist, the Jews, they can be saved. Pero bakit ganon ang tunada mo? Bakit ganon ang paniwala mo? Then, na ano so, may alam pala ito si brother. Siyempre, nag-aral din tayo ng Islam. Hindi naman talaga, may course din ako in Islam. But the problem, may mga, yung exclusivist mag-isip. That's why, ang religion, it becomes a hindrance now in achieving peace. So, problema yun. Kuha natin. So, the bottom line here, if we want to achieve peace, we have to respect the teachings. We have to respect each other's religion. Kaya nga, sabi naman isa, ang Muslim isa laman sa mundo. Talaga, kung Muslim daw lahat, may kapayapaan. Sabi ko, pikat, pag sure. Okay? Then, sinabi ko sa kanya, what about Iran and Iraq? They are all Muslims. Bakit nag-away? Because of religion. Pa natin. Then, ngayon, yung bago lang, may nag-post sa social media. Sabi niya, si Zelensky is a Jew. Si Putin is an Orthodox Catholic. Sabi niya, magkaaway talaga Orthodox Christian si Putin. Talagang magkaaway yan, sabi ng kaibigan kong ustads. Then nag-post man ako, ustads, sabi ko, if we'll take away the religion, tanggalin kaya itong religion, wala ito kaya war sila, hindi na kaya ito magigera. Nag-thumbs up lang siya. Kaya nga, therefore, religion should not be the hindrance of achieving peace. Religion should lead us to achieve peace. That's why, in this, yung diagram nakikita niyo sa iba-iba, whether you like it or not, iba-ibang relihiyon natin. But this is supposed to be our guide to attain peace. And it should not be the hindrance. And do not use your religion to destroying other religion, condemning other religion. Matawa tayo dito. And I don't know, with your experience, I have been a lot of seminars and with the interreligious dialogue. We went to Kidapawan. This is a personal experience. Then, close friend ko yung ustad sa Pikit. Ang ganda na pinag-usapan. Then, to the point, humantong sa pinag-usap namin yung sa dialogue. Brother, sabi niya, alam mo, brother, napansin ko kayo mga Katoliko ba? Every time sa Pikit, December 8, that's Immaculate Conception, kay Mariam na fiesta, alam ko yun. Kita ko sa mga tao, yung rebulto ni Mama Mary, hawak-hawak. Tapos napansin ko, punas-punas. Then umiiyak sila, brother. Kaya napatunayan ko doon na sinasamba pa nila yung rebulto, yung gawa ng tao. Mali yun. Hindi dapat. Then sumagot ako, alam mo, Ustads, ganito yon. For us, wala kami itinuro mga Katoliko, nasambahin yan. Rebulto yan. For us, that's a representation. Sabi ko, kagaya ko, very simple, Ustads. Diba, meron kang picture sa wife mo. Pag namatay yung wife mo, nandyan pa rin yung picture, tinitingnan mo, kabait sa asawa ko, sana ganito, hindi, di ba? Nanghihinayang ka. Same is true with us, that's only a representation. Wala kaming dinuro sambahin. Pero how come, bakit naghawak-hawak? Okay? That's really devotion. Kasi for us, yung mga imahen, that's sacred. Para sa amin. Pero hindi namin tinuro sambahin yon. Then, binaliktad ko sa kanya, Ustads, naka-HUDS ka na ba? Ay, oo, brother. Talaga, napunta talaga last year, sabi niya. Nakarating ka na sa Kaaba? Oo, brother. Anong ginawa mo doon? Alam mo, brother, yung paghawak ko sa Blackstone, yung Kaaba, hindi ko mapigilan. Tumutulo yung luha ko, brother. Tapos sabi ko sa kanya, ay, idolater ka pala. Naniwala ka rin sa sinamba mo rin yung bato. Ay, hindi na, nag-react siya. Kita ninyo? Do not use your religion to condemn, to disrespect other belief. Tandaan natin yan mga ma'am, mga sir. Because religion should lead us, supposed to be, to peace. Kaya nga, wag kayo mga away. Alam ko kayo mga men in uniform, di man kayo nag-away ganyan. You respect each other. Pero may iba yan, exclusivist. May exclusivist. Yung mga exclusivist, yun yung kailangan turuan ng peace education so that they will be able to broaden their horizon. Not only the men in uniform, tayong lahat. Kasi may mga kapwa din ako teacher dito. I feel insulted. And why? You know, brother, ganito, ganyan. Sabi ko, tumanda ako seminaryo, tapos iganon lang ako kasi it's my responsibility talaga to tell you I am a Muslim, ganito, ganyan. Kasi ako yung sisingilin ni Allah na ganito, hindi ko itinuro sa'yo. Sabi ko, are you insulting me? Pero for the sake of peace, hindi ako nag-ano, but in my mind, are you insulting me? Okay? Kung ako kaya magano, I have also to tell you, kung ibaliktad ko, but for the sake of peace, hindi na ako nag-ano. Then, friend man kami sa Facebook, lahat ng mga sinisend niya sa akin, yung talagang against sa aking religion. Okay? Then, especially yung mga converts, yung sinasabing balik Islam, but there is nothing as balik Islam, but a convert to Islam, sila yung grabing manira. O, nung Katoliko pa ako, sinamba ko itong, sabi ko, demonyo naman itong mga taong ito. Sinabihan ko yung Ustads, remember Ustads, every time you pray the Al-Fatiha, Bismillah, Rahman, Rahim, what does it mean? God is the most merciful, the most compassionate God. Then if you condemn me, anong teaching sa God mo? If He's the most merciful, kung hindi ako maligtas. Kuha natin, ano pala yung God mo? Iba talaga yung God mo sa aking God? Kasi ang aking God is also the most merciful, the most compassionate God. He will forgive me. He will save me from this earthly life na kung magbago ako, maligtas ako. So that's the point, ha? Mga sir, broaden our horizon. That religion should be the source of peace, not the source of conflict and war. Okay. So medyo tumagal tayo dyan, pero sana matauhan din tayo. That the major spiritual and faith tradition inspires and motivates people to embrace peace as a mission. So each one of us has a mission. Then I really salute those mga mananampalataya na nagrespeto. Kasi sa mission, to respect. Yun yung value, respeto lang. Kasi hindi mo man pwedeng magsabi ka agad na, kung Kristiyano lang talaga lahat, mapayapa tayo. Dapat Islam lang lahat sa buong mundo. Ha? Yan yung mga radical mag-isip. Okay? Dapat Muslim lahat para walang gulo. It's not true. Even though Islam is the religion of peace. Okay? Kasi before you exist, nag-exist na. Marami na nag-exist na una sa atin. So, bottom line, we have our own mission. We have to witness. Kaya nga, witnessing na lang. Mag-witness ako. Kaya nga, yung mga kasamahan ko, mapiya si Brother JoArs. Kuan talaga, yung ganito, ganyan. Mapiya. Kasi I am a human person. I have my own religion. You have your own. But I respect your religion. And do not condemn me. I will not condemn you. Okay. Then all the religious believers have gone to war and committed acts of violence in the name of their faith. May mga ganun na. And it happened before. The conflict were actually rooted not in the matters of faith or even religion, but a conflict claimed to be social, political, economic goals according to Machado in his research, and which is true. Kagaya dito sa atin, pag magkagulo, gamitin na kaagad yung relihiyon. Islam kasi yan, Christian kasi yan, mahirap yun. But sabi sa study ni Machado, no. But in a conflicting claims of social, political, economic goals. That's one. But kung tanong niya, sir, nangyari ba talaga na ganito, ganyan? Political? Yes, nangyari yan. Alam natin yun na history. Especially in spreading Islam. Alam ninyo yan. Alam natin yung lahat in our history. Using sword. Okay, the spread to Spain, to Europe. Ano namang ginawa sa Kristiyano? Gumanti. Yung the crusade, remember that one? But hindi natin gustong balikan yon. Okay? And they are being halted in Spain. Okay? By sword mandala. Here comes the cross. Ang isa. So, therefore, yan. May away talaga doon. in spreading our religion. Pero sana hindi natin balikan yon. That's why now, because of peace education, we'll talk the so-called, yung tinatawag nating our similarity. We do not talk our differences. Kasi if we talk our differences, hindi talaga tayo magkakaintindihan. Labo-labo talaga yan, mga kapatid. Okay? So sana malinaw sa atin. Then a close-up of the original teaching spiritual faith tradition indicates that are essentially wellsprings and sources of peace. So, before talaga, it's a source of peace dapat ang religion. Okay? When I went to Cambodia, mga Buddhist man doon, may mga Hindu din. They are very peaceful people. They are in poverty, of course, mas mahirap pa kaysa sa atin. But when it comes to their faith, because of the way they pray, they were able to respect others, to the other creatures, of course, to other human being. Okay? Pero may civil war man siya, nagkagulo-gulo man sila. Then here comes other religion, ginulo din sila. Ayun, nagkalabo-labo. Doon nga sa amin, doon when I went there, kagaya nangyari sa Marawi, ang cathedral sa Cambodia, sinunog. Then I went to that cathedral, of course, inayos na. Then I prayed. Sabi ko, nangyari din pala dito. Nangyari sa Marawi Cathedral namin. Sinunog din with that extremists. By the way, the extremists, maraming nagko-condemn din. They claim to be the real Muslim, but they are not. Extreme mag-isip. Violent na tuloy. Kaya violent extremists sila. And therefore, ang peace, yung the religious source, hindi natuloy. Wala na. Wala na ang peace. Okay? Then we need to rediscover the principles and values that they uphold to remind us the essential mission of each faith tradition to seek peace. So that's a reminder. The drawing here, it reminds us that this, our religion, should be the source of peace, not a source of conflict. Cooperation and understanding among the various spiritual faith traditions have now become imperative. We now seek a common ground of shared values among the diverse faith to show that despite the diversity, we are one humanity with the same fundamental aspirations for respect and acceptance and for living together in peace. Kaya nga, the ustads, the ulama, mayroon tayo dito mayroon tayo ditong ulama bishop conference, nag-uusap sila in order to achieve peace. In the other world, we have also the movement, yung a common world. A common world. Muslim, Christians, and the Jews. Kasi yung the three major religion, Islam, the Jews, as well as Christians, we are a monotheistic religion. We believe in one God. That's very common to us. Kaya nga nag-uusap sila. Okay? In order to achieve peace. Pero ang nasa baba, nangangaway. So, yan yung problema. Then some of the common peace teachings that the various spiritual traditions subscribes to. One is the rejection of violence, love and compassion for each human, for other humans, then love and compassion with other creatures and life forms in nature, then respect human dignity, then justice for fairness. So yun ang common peace teaching in the spiritual traditions. Okay, whatever is your belief, whatever is your religion. Like the golden rule. So sa Christianity, in Matthew, makita man natin, whatever you do to your brethren, to others, you do it unto me. Okay? Whatever you wish to others, to you, do it to them. That is what the law and the prophets are all about. That's in Matthew and Luke, makikita natin. Pero yung very common na kung ano ang di mo gusto, wag gawin sa iba. Yan. Do not do unto others if you don't want that others will do it unto you. And that's a golden rule in which pare-pareho lang yung sinasabi sa mga relihiyon na yan. Iba lang yung pagkasabi pero yung pinupunto. In Islam, no one of you is believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself. That's in the hadith. Okay, so once again, ganda no? No one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself. So, ganun din. Whatever you do to your brother, you do it unto me. Pero dito naman, iba lang ang pagkasabi, no one, you cannot be a believer kung, so kuha natin, then, trust not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. That's, I think, the Udana Varga, the Buddhism. Okay? Then, Hinduism naman, sabi dito, this is the essence of morality. Do not do others which, if done to you, would cause you pain. Okay? So, yun sabi nila. Then, the indigenous spirituality naman, ang sinasabi, do not strive to cause your neighbor's undoing, for as you strive for your own good treatment, surrender it to others. So, in general, ito yung the golden rule. Do not do unto others if you don't want that others would do it unto you. Think malinaw yan. Kaya nga sa Filipino, yung inawit ko, kung ano ang di mo gusto, huwag gawin sa iba. Kung ano ang iyong inutang, ay siya ring kabayaran. That's an old song, but that's a golden rule. Kaya yan, sabi na natin. Then, we will promote the culture of tolerance, of non-violence, peace, encourage support, mutual understanding, solidarity, cooperation among all peoples within among nations. Or we have, sabi dito, coexist. If we want to coexist, we are all friends. Nandyan ka, dito ako, friend tayo. Akbayan tayo, magtulungan tayo. And we'll not talk about the differences of our belief, but we talk about what is common so that we will have peace. What is common is we have to love each other. We have to respect each other. Okay? In order to achieve harmony. Hindi yung manatili yung pride mo na ikaw lang ang tama. Then there are theme of peace. So you have to fast track this one. Upholding human dignity. That's the first theme. That the center of value system we associate with social peace. That's more on the human dignity. As defined, a fundamental innate worth of a human being, a principle that is now universally accepted but has taken root in the action practices of many governments, communities, and other non-state actors, that human dignity. So, upholding human dignity, that's the first, once again, the first theme of peace. The principle of human dignity is enshrined in the teaching of the major faith. In Christianity, this would be rooted in the belief that God created human beings in His image. Likewise, in the commandment of Jesus, that we love our neighbor, even one's enemies. In Islam, in upholding human dignity, it is believed that all human beings have the right to life at conception and after birth, a right to full opportunities to lead a rewarding and satisfying life. Ang ganda, no? Then, education that seeks to uphold human dignity is often referred as a human rights education, which is within an umbrella we call peace education. In peace education, one of the central concerns is the promotion of human dignity, a well-being because of the conviction that this is the foundation of peace. Then si Betty Reardon, in Upholding Human Dignity, aptly noted that the achievement of positive conditions of human rights provide the foundation of a non-violent social order and greatly reduce the causes of armed conflict with war. In his research, 1995. Then another theme of peace is challenging prejudice and building tolerance. So, tingnan natin ito. According to the study of Alford, asserts that humans have the propensity towards prejudice, and this propensity lies in their normal tendency to form generalizations and categories whose content represents the oversimplifications of their world experiences. So, meron din daw yung sinasabi nating prejudice. So what about this prejudice? This is a negative or attitude towards person or group even if it lacks basis. And you know that one. What about this stereotyping na binabox yung tao? It refers to negative opinion about a person or group based on the incomplete knowledge. Meron tayong stereotyping dito palagi, no? Ang mga Tagalog, ganito yan. Ang mga Ilocano, kuripot yan. Ang mga Ilonggo, tikalon yan. Ang mga Cebuano, talawan na sila. Ang mga Tagalog, putig itlog. Yan yung mga stereotyping na in which galit ka rin. Okay? Then we have also discriminations, also negative actions towards members of the specific social group that may be manifested in avoidance, aversion, or even violence. That's according to the study of Francois in 1986. Ayan, tingnan niyo yan. Can you blame Trump? Anti-Muslim siya. Or talaga anti-Muslim siya. Can we blame him? Bakit galit siya? Because of the experience. Okay, because of the experience. That's why during those times, talagang problema yun. Okay, hindi ka basta-basta makapasok. Especially kapag nakanikab ka. Okay, tinitingnan ka talaga. There are types of prejudice. Take note of this. Can you spot the racist baby? Kung ikaw, yung pinakita ko ito sa ibang klase, sabi, Sir, wala man dyan, sir. Maganda. At least hindi ka racist. Pero pag tayo, uy, naiitom, naikulot, ayun yan talaga. Ayan ang problema natin. That's a prejudice. Types of prejudice yung racism. The belief of racial superiority. Maganda ito. May poem written by an African child which was nominated as the best poem of 2005. Basahin ko lang. There's more on racism. When I born, I black. When I grow up, I black. When I go in the sun, I black. When I scared, I black. When I sick, I black. And when I die, I still black. And you white fellows, when you born, you pink. When you grow up, you white. When you go in sun, you red. When you cold, you blue. When you scared, you yellow. When you sick, you green. When you die, you gray. And you call me colored. That's more on the example of racism. And that poem talagang nakakalungkot pag black ka. And why? Kasi noon kasi history, pag black ka, parang you're a second-class citizen, you're a slave. Okay? Kaya nga yung mga black talagang nagsisika for their equality. Martin Luther King, sino pa? Nung nagkaroon ng Black American si Obama, di ba ang saya? Okay? Gender, another, about this sexism, the subordination on others on the basis of sex. Babae, lalaki, dapat equal. Kaya in our Philippine government, may budget tayo. Ano yung budget na 5% na dapat turuan kaming kalalakihan not to be biased. Okay? Dapat alam namin na we are not the first class, we are not the number one citizen. Dapat equal dapat. Okay? Yun palaging tinuturo. Then, heterosexism, a negative attitude towards lesbian and gay men. Ayun talaga. This is an issue all over the world. Tingnan ninyo yung rainbow flag. Everywhere in the world, this is an issue. But if you're a believer, I for one is a believer, hindi pwede. Pero pag salita natin ito, i-broadcast natin, ibabas ka. Like what happened to Pacquiao? Talagang, ikaw, di ba? Mas masahol pa kayo sa hayop. Kayong mga bayot, kayong mga bakla. Di ba? Sinabi niya yon. Which is, totoo naman. Sino namang hayop dyan? Halimbawa, aso, makipagtalik sa kapwa niya lalaki? Wala. Babaeng aso makipagtalik sa ang tao. May intellect and will given by God. I'm not against those people, the bayot and the tumboy. They are very talented. Pero ngayon, they want equality. Sila man din nagpaano kasi sa kanilang yung sabi, we are being discriminated kasi ganito. No, you are not discriminated. Kayo nagpa-discriminate. Kaya may estudyante ko dito, mga bayot. Kung bayot kayo, or bayot. Huwag nang magdagdag dudo. Huwag nang sex transplant. That's against the will of God. That's against the supernatural law. Alaman nila yon. Kasi ganito, we are happy, talagang ganito, pero yung iba nagsisisi. Ilong, tanggal, lahat. Di ba, mayroon tayong baby gandang hari. Ngayon, ano na siya, gandang hari, nagpa-sex transplant na. Si Charis. There are a lot. Okay? So, ito yung issue din. Negative attitudes towards lesbian and gay men. Sa ako, as peace educator, they are all welcome. I'm not against them. I am not against those people. Marami akong friend na mga co-teachers na talagang friend. Kasi ang bayot, pag friend mo yan, friend talaga yan. Dipinsan ka yan. Kahit na magsabunutan. Mga estudyante ko, marami akong friend na bayot. Pero pag magsabi na sila na same-sex marriage, it's a big no-no. Hindi pwede yun. Okay? Hindi pwede yun. Kaya nga, negative ako doon. Pero for the sake of peace, you are welcome. We are brothers and sisters. Ganon dapat sa peace. Pero in my own, pero pagsabihan, ipilit, magsuporta ka sa akin na talagang sexual union, yung same-sex union. Kahit na union pa yun. It destroys matrimony. It destroys marriage. Whatever is your religion. Why it destroys marriage? Paano ka manganak? Babae-babae, lalaki-lalaki. Milagro? Pag manganak, babae-babae, lalaki-lalaki, I don't know kung may God pa kaya. That's the point there. Ulitin ko, I am not against with those people. I salute them. They are very talented. Ang galing nila. Intelligent. Kaya nga sa inyo, mga pulis, mga sundalo, kahit na bayo, tanggap yun. Kasi kakaya, mas bright pa sila kaysa sa atin. But when it comes to the issue on this na ikasal dapat sila pareho, hindi pwede yun. Kung pwede mo yun sa iba, para sa iba yun. Kaya nga minsan, kita natin social media, may nagpari-pari doon na kinakasal, lalaki, babae. Akala, katoliko agad. No, it's not a teaching in our Catholic Church. Na ikasal yan. Nagbihis, pari lang sila, kay pari-pari man. But they are not a Catholic priest. Kung may magkasal man yan, ako unang magsampal sa paring yon. Kasi it's a big no-no. Biblically, of course, in the Quranic verses, bawal. Alam natin, pareho lang yon. Okay, but do not judge them. Who am I to judge? Okay? Kaya minsan, nahihiya ako sa kapwa ko teacher. Kagaling, ka-bright, pasalitean mo, kagaling. But who are you to judge? God knows the relationship to our Creator. Pero sabi ko nga, doon lang talaga against ako pag magpakasal na sila. It's a big no-no. Okay? That's, kaya nga, prejudice. Classism. Distancing from and perceiving the poor as the other. Yung mga pobre, parang second-class citizen sila. Kagaya sa atin, kaya nga, hamon yan sa atin. Kita tayo mga badyaw, ito na, mahingi naman. Why not give? But not money. Give food. And you are a blessing to the children, to that old people. If you give. Okay? That's a challenge. Next is ageism. The negative attitudes held against the young or the elderly. Bata ka pa, wala pa, may ano ka pa, gatas ka pa sa bibig mo. Ikaw matanda ka, hindi ka pwede magtrabaho, you are not hired. Ganito. Kaya nga sabi ng kaibigan ko, in the United States, karamihan daw sa kanilang nagbabantay sa mga grocery, mga matatanda na. Kaya nga, dito sa atin, pag 60 ka na, wala ka ng karapatan magtrabaho kasi 60 ka na. Kahit able ka pa. Buti lang kung hindi ka na able. So that's more on prejudice on ageism. What about this? Prejudice talaga ito. The lookism. Prejudice against those who do not measure up to set standards of beauty. The usual victims are the overweight, the undersized, and the dark skin. Tingnan ninyo ito. Si Koki, naalala nyo, EBS-CBN dati? Tapos yan, grabe. Election times during those times, si Vice President natin, yun pala. Pagtaba ka, payat ka, ubis ka, yan. That's lookism. You are judged according to your look. Si Brother JoArs, Bisaya kay gitsura. I am judged sa tayo ama Bisaya. Okay? Kaya Bisaya, medyo kugnaw. Watay mahimo ana. Pero you are judged. Bisaya jud ka because of your look. Okay? Then we have linguicism, the negative attitudes which members of the dominant language groups hold against the dominant language group. Ito naman yon. Kaya nga itong linguicism, halimbawa, yung iba nga dito sa atin, di na mahalata, no? Cebuano, talagang magaling Maguindanawon, magaling magbaranaw. Then Maranao, ang galing mag-Ilonggo, ang galing mag-Cebuano. So, parang hindi na masyado mahalata. Pero itong linguicism, if you are not speaking, no, kagaya sa amin, you are an outcast. Okay? Kasi hindi ka in sa aming grupo. Kasi kami lang ang may alam sa aming lingwahe. And that's the point of this prejudice. Ito. The religious intolerance. Prejudice against those who are followers of the religious other than one's own. Itong sinabi ko kanina. Yung our religion is supposed to be that will lead us to peace. But anong nangyari because of this prejudice? Yun tuloy ang nangyari. Kami lang talagang totoo. Dapat magsali ka sa amin. Kasi yung sa iyo, peke yun. Kaya nga, prejudice against those who are followers of religions other than their own. Dapat, marami, especially yun, yung ulitin ko, itong mga kapatid nating galing Kristiyano, nag-join, nag-embrace ng Islam, grabing panira. Sabi ko, hindi naman tututuro ang Muslim. Bakit paninira lang? Na ang turo sa Muslim, magmahal, magrespeto. Sabi ko nga, si Prophet Muhammad, during his time, love niya ang mga kaparian, friends sa kaparian. Nung na-exile siya, naglalakad sa disyerto, friend niya, pinupuntahan niya mga kaparian. Pero dito, nangangaway. Where is peace? Yun yung religious intolerance. Example of prejudice. Okay? Kuha natin. Sana. Nagkaintindihan tayo. So, yung mga sinasabi natin. Kaya nga, thus, stereotypes being negative beliefs about the groups can be formed of the basis for prejudicial feelings, which in turn may lead to the negative action or to discrimination. So, we're going to fast track. We'll proceed to the next. Ito. What race can you identify to yourself? A nation, a white, African, Hispanic, Native, but all of the above are mali. We are human. We are all humans. Okay? Next theme is the third theme na tayo sa peace, promoting non-violence. So I told you already, this is coming from the well-known Gandhi. The non-violence is a refusal to do harm to other human life. Is sacred and is an absolute value. It is anchored in the belief that humans have the potential to change. And why non-violence? Because it is both an ethical as well as moral choice. It is a destruction. It's not the law of human. Non-violence is a practical choice. Tools and effects of violence are costly than the non-violent works. So that's why this is more on promoting the third theme, promoting non-violence. So next. Number 4. Theme is more on challenging the war system. We know that war is a classical or international if it is between states, or civil or international if it occurs between the rival groups or communities within a state. So this is happening now in Ukraine, that's country. Another country is in Russia. And before, gustong i-reclaim siguro ni Putin because they are one before. Kaya nga, pag may magsali-sali ngayon, magsabi sa, this is an internal conflict. Let us solve this conflict. Wala kayong pakialam. Lumaki ang ulo. But the fact, since they are independent states, so therefore we can say that's war. Then there are possible causes of war. Territorial disputes, that can be Russia as well as Ukraine. Kasi before, isa lang man sila, di ba? Baka yun yung iniisip ni Putin na kukunin ko yan. The lack of differences, that's one. Ideological power struggle, that's also, it can be happening now. Ukraine, power struggle. Nasuya si Putin kasi mayaman ang Ukraine or ano bang nasuyaan niya. Then, a history of colonization, colonialism, and a process of decolonization nangyari sa Pilipinas. Then, competition of resources. That can be, pwede rin nangyari yan doon sa Russia as well as Ukraine. So that's why may gera sila. The next, malapit na tayo. What about the effects of war? Most horrible effect of war is the massive death. And it's happening now. Okay, it's happening now, the massive death. Children, women, the civilians. Kawawa. Diba, binumba, very inhuman. Genocide nga, sabi ni President Zelensky. Binumbahan yung hospital, that's a big no-no. Alam niyo yan, mga men in uniform. Diba, may rule of engagement man kayo. Pero ang ginawa, that's a problem. Then cause people to flee their homes na nangyayari. Weapons of to proliferate. Then the next is the loss of livelihoods and their access to food supplies, the loss of investments, destroy property environment, raise opportunity for tourism, wars disrupt children's education, great fear and trauma among the population. So those are the effects of war. Yung iba nangarap ng World War, sana wag kayong mangarap kasi ang hirap. Kaya nga if you are going to internalize what is happening now in the two countries, nakakaiyak. Tingnan mo sa TV. Okay, nakakaiyak. Mga bata. Yun ang problema. That's the effect of war. Then the next theme is all about sharing the Earth's resources. The number 5 theme of peace is sharing the Earth's resources. The highly uneven distribution of wealth and resources is a situation of violence known as the structural violence. So yun ang problema. One of the petals. Then this violence refers to the systems, institutions, and policies that meet some people's human needs, rights, and wants at the expense of others. Hunger and poverty are symptoms of violence. That's why we have to share the resources and we have to be a responsible stewards of God's creation. Then share that to other creatures. Then the other causes of poverty. What are those causes of poverty? War and armed conflict disrupts the people's livelihood and all productive activities, political systems created by local political elite that have combined with profit-motivated economic system that reduce opportunities for most people to earn enough to meet their basic needs. Then inequitable distribution of wealth and resources, much of which has begun in a colonial history. The environment conditions, lack of opportunities of such employments, lack of education, corruption, overconsumption, and greed. Those are the causes of the so-called poverty. The next theme of peace is resolving and transforming conflict. We know conflict comes from the Latin word conflictus, which means striking together with force. So once again, the root word, etymological meaning of conflict comes from the Latin word conflictus, which means striking together with a force. The main option of dealing with conflict is avoidance or withdrawal, aggression, accommodation, compromise, and collaboration. And I think you'll be discussing this one with your subject, especially in the juris and conflict management. Meron kayong subject dyan and it will be elaborated by your professor. Then we have the mediation. So we know this one already about the meaning of peace education. Then according to Dalai Lama, we can never make peace in the outer world until we make peace within ourselves. Once again, Dalai Lama said, we can never make peace in the outer world until we make peace within ourselves. Then peace is the behavior that encourages harmony in a way people talk, listen, interact with each other and discourages actions to hurt, harm, or destroy such other, according to Teresa Bay Ann Turner in 1985. So we move on. So according to Reardor, we have already discussed this one, why we study peace. So to conclude, peace education is not an easy task to accomplish. The success of doing it relies heavily on the content and the process of teaching it. So if you want peace, teach peace. Then peace education addresses one of the most difficult human dilemmas. How can people live in peace? Throughout this past century, peace educators have created academic content, practical skills, and peaceful pedagogies that would help the citizens of the world produce peace. In spite of these efforts, not all schools and colleges embrace the study of peace. So we are lucky that we have also peace. That therefore it's also our duties and our responsibilities, our obligation to share this, to teach this with our uh, agencies, with our communities, of course, with our family. So I hope you learned something, my dear people of God. Once again, I am your professor. I am Brother JoArs Alferez. God bless us all. Dalaygon ang Diyos. Stay safe.